Looking at the numbers when it comes to the interest in Australia and the growth of the pool of capital here, is that what's being reflected in your business?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, we're really excited about the growth, Heidi, in Australia, in particular in terms of high net worth and ultra high net worth investors. As you mentioned, it's one of the fastest growing regions in the world, and we really want to position the business to be taking advantage of that longer term.
And how do you do that in terms of what's differing in your strategy here versus, say, your competitors?
You know, obviously I'm a bit biased, but Morgan Stanley, I think, we have the #1 equities franchise globally. We're the largest wealth and investment manager in the world, and we've got a leading investment bank. That integrated offering is truly in a class of its own, and bringing that to our wealth clients is very powerful. More specifically on wealth management, one of the exciting things we're doing in the US, which will come to Australia in time, is technology and AI and what that means for our clients and advisors.
How does the landscape for wealth management differ in Australia, and how does it compete, I guess, to sort of more global markets?
It's a really good question. Australia is a more maturing market. We're starting to become more sophisticated as investors, but it's still very early days. Other regions are a little bit more established in that, so it's a real opportunity for us to bring some of that leading ideas that we have and we've learnt from overseas markets to Australia.
Where specifically are you seeing the growth coming from in terms of the Australian market?
It's really just as businesses continue to grow, the economy continues to grow. There are business owners that are having liquidity events. We're just growing our national wealth, and that feeds into Australian net wealth as well.
You talked about, obviously, the exuberant interest in themes like AI and robotics and technology. Is there a sort of what to invest in Australia? What are the options for them to invest in when it comes to those themes? Because domestically, we're often seen as a bit of a laggard when it comes to those policies and those innovations.
It's very much a global theme for us. So there are ways for investors to tap into that in other markets, be it through the US, Europe, or other parts of Asia. So where the investment opportunities might be a little bit more limited in Australia, but I think Australian companies are going to be leading at some of those at the forefront, but very much tapping into other asset classes offshore.
Yeah. Private credit has obviously been the other area that's seen so much interest. Wealth capital has been one of the pools of liquidity that we've been talking about. Do you think, is that being reflected in the interest that you're getting here?
Yeah, absolutely. All of our clients, they're very much focused on the alternative asset class as a broader class, but private credit is having its sort of golden age at the moment. And, that's because banks and the regulations are increasing there, so you've got private funds that are really filling that gap. So our investors, with higher interest rates, are really looking to tap into that as well.
Are the risks being well understood?
Look, as all different asset classes, it depends on your risk appetite. So I think the importance really is getting financial advice. It's really understanding what those risks are, because they are different to having credit from a bank as opposed to a private credit provider.
Where are you seeing, other than the fact that obviously it's the sort of flavour of the month, where are you seeing that demand for interest in private credit actually come from?
It's across the board, and I think it generally is. It was first driven, obviously, being in a higher interest rate environment and the returns that are happening. But as I mentioned before, just really that pool of capital is not being provided now by the banks, given the regulations. So private investors, be they the asset owners, the superannuation funds, the private smaller investors, that's where the pool of capital is coming from.
I want to talk a little bit more about the business. Headcount, are you going to add some, do you think, for Australia?
Definitely. Look, we want to grow, we want to be part of the market here, but we're very conscious of growing with the right headcount. So it's about the people that fit us culturally and are really going to help add scale to our business in the right way.
Are there uncertainties when it comes to the broader macroeconomic outlook in terms of how the business performs over the next few years?
Not so much the business. I think the great thing about wealth management, and we see this globally as well, whether it's a positive cycle or a challenging cycle, investors always want financial advice. So the wealth business benefits from that. I do think, yes, we've been in a challenging market period and it is a growth adjustment happening. But I think we're starting to see and hoping by the back end of the year, and certainly our house view is that we'll start to see the Fed cut rates, Australia in the new year. That policy certainty really helps support investor sentiment.
Yeah, that's kind of been the theme coming up. It's the certainty as to, either politically or when it comes to monetary policy or fiscal policy. When it comes to the strategy that you've been applying for the Australia business, is there any takeaways that you think would be useful for other parts of the business globally?
Yeah, look, it's a bit of, we take a lot from what happens globally, but also for our business here, we've done a real strategic pivot to focus on high net worth and ultra high net worth investors. I think one of the speakers at our summit today mentioned being really focused on what you do exceptionally well and getting better at that. And that's where we think we do the best, is focusing on those clients. So for us, it's about making the right investment decisions in the business and really creating that nimble, scalable business for the benefit of the clients.
What is the one thing that your clients are asking at the moment? What is sort of the most top of mind or most concerning, do you think, for the client pool?
I think it's really that global macro outlook. Is when do we start to feel more comfortable that we're getting more certainty in the market? When do I kind of deploy more of my cash into assets, the alternative investments?
Is there a lot of the sidelines at the moment?
There isn't as much as there was probably 12 months ago, and we're increasingly seeing sort of cautious redeployment of that, but it is very much about wanting to see a few more certainty around the policy direction.